I just created my first Instagram filter. It is a bingo board for programmers where you can select all the tasks you've done. And if you get 5 across or you get 5 up and down, you get 5 diagonally, it'll show bingo and it'll show the number of bingos that you got. So it'll kind of show how much of a programmer are you and how many things you've done over the course of your career. But what I want to show here is how I built this. First, I want to demo it. Then I want to show how I built this using Metaspark and JavaScript code. So if you look at the screen, I have it here where you can tap on different buttons. Then you get 5 in a row, it says bingo. Then if you do another 5 down the top, you get bingo 2, and so on and so on. If I do another bingo, then I get another bingo. Yeah, it's basically just bingo chips showing on the screen. And once you get a bingo, it shows bingo text on the screen that just lets you know that you got bingo. And it's a pretty simple effect, but this is my first one and I just want to try to get my feet wet before I start building more complex effects. So how did I build this? So you see open right now is this app called Metaspark. If you want to download it, you can Google it. Just Google Metaspark and download the desktop application to Windows or Mac, and it should open up looking like this. This is the project that I actually built it in, and I'll kind of show you around. On the side here, there's scenes. These are all the different objects. So like all the little chips have their own object. The whole canvas has an object. The camera itself, me as the user is an object, like me showing how I'm showing on the screen. There's a background, and that's the background that I added in, which that whole board is something I created in Canva separately. I didn't create that in here. And so then the 3D text actually has its own object too, and it's like a 3D thing that kind of floats over me. And you can create that right in Metaspark. And let me show the chips as well. So like here's an example of what a chip looks like. So that's the chip going on and off, and I have that set up to where when you tap the screen, the chip shows up, and then I have JavaScript logic that basically counts the chips and if you scored a bingo with the number of chips that you have currently turned on. So how did I do this? So I'm gonna go through a simple tutorial of how I built the chips, and then I think from there you'll be able to build this whole thing if you learn how to just simply do that. So let me show how you do that first. I'm gonna start a new project from a template, and the template I chose is background. It's the easiest template to start from, but they got a lot of cool templates you can start from that will help you get a little farther. So if you see here, they give you the main screen. They tell you they give you hints about what to start with. Here they have an image in here, a texture basically called Remind Me or Replace Me. And so you can replace this little red looking background with whatever image you want, and they kind of tell you to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I already got pre-made images here. So if you see now my programming bingo images in here, so we're already off to a good start. You can change the perspective up here. I'm gonna change it to back, and then you can scroll to kind of zoom in. And so if you see here, I got my bingo board ready to go so far. And what I'm gonna do, if you open in the scenes up here, you can look at all the items you have. So it's some ambient light. Don't have to worry about that right now, but this zero canvas 0 is really important. This is the user. This is where I'm actually at. This is the layer that actually has me on here. And then this is the background layer. So this is where the actual image is. And what I wanna do is in here, I want to add some chips onto the screen that can be clicked on. So it can add a chip to the screen every time you click on one of these items that you say that you've done as a programmer. So how I'm going to do that is add a rectangle, and then I'm going to rename the rectangle to be bingo chip. And then I'm actually going to reposition it here. You see this little white and black grid is the actual rectangle. So I'm gonna reposition that and put that here. And what I wanna do is I wanna make this look like a bingo chip instead of this black and white. So how you do that is you add images on here are called textures. So, and I guess they're like assets or whatever too. So you right click here, add asset. I already have my bingo chip made from Canva. So now I rename that bingo chip. And then you need to make a material, because these things get sourced by material. So like you have to put an image. So first you put in a texture, then you put a texture into a material. So then just add a material. And let's call it bingo chip as well. Actually, the naming scheme is mat. So let's add bingo chip mat. And then over here is always the properties of whatever you clicked on over here. So over here I got my bingo chip mat properties. In texture, you can select a texture. Just put the bingo chip in there. It'll show you that you put the bingo chip in there. And then back up here in the rectangle, it actually lets you select a material. So that's how the chain goes. Put in a texture from an image file, put the texture in a material, and then put the material into your rectangle or whatever your UI component is that you want to add it to. So I'm gonna pick bingo chip material to put in here. So now as you can see, the bingo chip material shows up here. And I kind of want this to be like a perfect square. So let me fix the width and height 92. And then I want these to be fixed together so that they always stay together. So it's always a perfect circle. And there you go, you have that sitting there. So now you have a bingo chip here. And how I'm gonna make the bingo chip clickable is these things called patches. So you click on the bingo chip, right click, create patch. It's gonna show a bunch of stuff here, but you don't really need that. You just need to find the bingo chip and kind of scroll out of that area to empty space in the patch editor. This is where you're gonna be working from to build like patches and things. And so we have a patch, and what you can do from the patch editor, and this is, I'm gonna show it here, but this is something that you read the documentation online for Metaspark on how to learn how to look all these different options they have that you can do. You can add animations, you can add audio things with the device. I mean, there's so many things you can do. Interactions, head shake, happy face, nod. I mean, time-based stuff, so much stuff. But what I'm looking for is an object tap. So that means the object got tapped on. So I'm gonna add that patch. It adds this here. And how you do things in this patch editor, you connect them via these little connection things, whatever they're called. And so you can take your object from up here and connect it and say, okay, when this object gets tapped on by just connecting these here. Because the output of this is an object. If you kind of click on it, you see, and the input of this one, object tap, is an object. So it's basically saying this is an object that has been tapped on. And then from there, you have a tap event, and you can do something with that tap. And what we want to do with that tap is connect it to what's called a switch, which will kind of give us ability to get a true and false. Because when we click, it's either, it's either something happened and we need to kind of turn it into like a true or false or some sort of flipping type of operation. So you can use a switch. You add the switch, you can either say turn on, turn off, or you can say like toggle or flip. So I want to use flip. Basically, this bingo chip, when it gets tapped, flip this switch, and then we need to do something with that flip. Well, basically with that flip, we want to affect the property of our bingo chip, and we want to make it show or not show. And so in this case, we want to make it show. So I'm going to turn this off by default and have it off to start. And then when you look at these arrows over here, these are patches. These are able to create like input patches. So if I click this, it'll add a patch down here, which basically says affect visibility based off of this. So I can plug this switch into here. And now it says bingo chip object tap. When it's tapped, flip a switch. That switch controls the visibility of the bingo chip. So it's kind of just creates a path here of interaction. I just messed up there. So the mistake I made is that you can't have the same thing that you're changing be the same thing that they're clicking on, or at least I don't know how to do it. So what you have to do is add something, add a new asset, another rectangle that's actually what you're clicking on, like an invisible button basically, to show what you're trying to show. So I added a rectangle. I'm gonna rename it. I'm gonna call this bingo chip tap. And so this is gonna be a rectangle that's gonna sit over the bingo chip and just basically be like the tap area. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna pull it down here. I'm gonna remove this. Like I said, I need to have a different object to tap. And then this shows this ugly thing. What I can do is actually go down here and add like an empty material. So let's see, I can add a material and I want to call it blank material. And I wonder if I could just make it empty here. Yeah, opacity all the way down. So I'm just gonna turn the opacity down, and then in my bingo tab, I'm gonna actually select that empty blank material here. And so now it's gonna show up here. And it just looks empty. So actually, yeah, that's all you need to do is create a blank material and just put it in here as a button. So I still have my other button under this button, but just gives me a different thing to click on. So what I'm actually gonna do is make this be the start of the flow. And now this tap object, once it gets tapped on, it's gonna actually affect the visibility of the bingo chip. Now this should work. Yeah, and you can see here, click that, you get the bingo chip on and off. It just toggles it back and forth. So we got our first bingo chip working, which is great. So that's how you start it off, and that's how you basically create a bingo chip to start. And so you can do all of this in the patch editor, but what you can also do is affect this stuff via JavaScript code, which allows you to do a lot more powerful stuff with it. And so how I ended up doing this thing where I like went 5 across and was able to logically tell if like we had 5 going across and basically show that how many bingos we had is by writing some JavaScript. So what you can do is go down to script, you can add scripts. I want to use JavaScript, and now we have a JavaScript file. And by using toScript up here in the properties, you can basically add different variables that you want to be pumped into this JavaScript code as like an input variable. So a tab is considered a post in this case. For whatever reason, they have it named differently, than they could have just named it tab. But so I'm just gonna call this bingo. I'm also gonna call this bingo chip tab, or let's call it bingo chip post to be more precise. And then you can also hit the arrow here to add it down to the patch editor. So now it goes into the patch editor. So instead of changing the visibility directly here in the patch editor, just change it inside of code. So we can just move this up here and make the attachment. So this basically means, and we actually can, I think, remove this switch now because we're using JavaScript logic. So let's remove the switch. And let's go, as soon as it taps, we're gonna go straight into this post. And basically because this goes into the script, this post variable is gonna go into the script as an event that basically says this button got tapped on. So we'll know that we'll know whenever this goes into code and we subscribe to it that a button has gotten tapped, or the button that we want has gotten tapped. So the script, you can open it in VS Code or whatever code editor that you want. They go ahead and scaffold out stuff for you. A scene, which is kind of like the main top level of all your objects that you're working with. And then inside this async function is kind of where you're gonna do all your logic. And I already have my logic from when I built this, so I'm gonna use it kind of as a reference. Here, we're working with patches, so we're gonna need to load in some modules. So here, the scene module's already loaded in. We need to load in patches as well, and I'm gonna show you why we need to do that later. But you wanna require the patches, load in the patches. This is in the instructions from Metaspark 2 in the documentation, so you can follow along there as well. It's the same instructions. And so what you do in here is you end up having finding a reference to the things that you want to change. And so how you do that is I'm gonna copy this and kind of show what you would do. So to access a scene object, so some object in the scene, I want to access that first bingo chip that we made over here. And so the name of that chip is bingo_chip. So I'm gonna change my code here to be bingo chip. Scene root find first is the syntax from using this scene module is how you actually pull a reference to the bingo chip that's referenced over here. So we want to get a reference to it. I'm going to call it bingo chip, set it as a const. So now we have a reference to the bingo chip from over here that we were making, turning on the visibility for. And so the other thing we have to do is, like I said, we need to subscribe to our bingo chip post, the button click when something gets tapped on. So how we do that is what's called a post. And I'm going to copy that from over here. Then I'm going to explain it. And I'm just going to call this bingo chip post because that's what we named it over here. So we just have to use the same name, bingo chip post. We're gonna name bingo chip post. And so patches, that's what we referenced up here. Patches output get post will allow you to get the value or respond to this or get a reference to it. So once you get the reference to bingo chip post, then you want to subscribe to it so that you can do some action after it gets clicked on, after it gets tapped on. And how you do that is the subscribe function. So I'm gonna copy all this in, save some time, and I'm just gonna rename. I'm gonna pull all this out so we can see what's going on. Want to name this bingo chip post, and we're basically gonna subscribe to it. And inside of this function, this anonymous function here, is we're going to show what action we want to happen. And what we want to do is that bingo chip, we actually want to hide or show it. So I'm going to actually put bingo chip from up here inside of this subscribe. So every time this post happens, the button gets tapped, then I want to take bingo chip and I'm going to hide hidden value. I'm going to use this negation to basically change its hidden value. So that's gonna basically toggle the visibility. So that'll turn the object on and off from visibility to bingo chip, which we got a reference to here. And so this is in the JavaScript code. You click save to save that. And so this means the code is gonna run. It's gonna get a reference to the bingo chip. It's gonna get a reference to the post. It's gonna subscribe to the post. So basically when bingo chip is tapped, kind of like our invisible tap area, it's going to send this post to the code. The code is going to get a reference to the original bingo chip and then hide or show it based on what its current value is. So we should be able to test this out and it should work. You can go down here to test and then test it on a real device that you have plugged into the computer. That's how I was doing that before. And then as you can see, the tapping still works even with the JavaScript code. And so that's how you simply do it. That's how you simply add things to the screen and allow them to be clicked on. There's so many more powerful things you can do with Metaspark that I haven't even touched on. 3D objects and effects and filters. And you can do things based on how the person is moving and their facial features and all kind of like amazing stuff. This is just kind of like just a slight toe in the water for everything the possibilities that you can do with this thing. If you look at my full code, I had to make 25 bingo chips, so I have a lot more logic here to actually loop through and get reference to all the chips, reference to all the chip actions, and then I have logging statements in here that you can do to kind of see what's going on. I turn the visibility of the chip based on whether it's clicked on, and then I also have like an algorithm here that shows me the number of bingo wins, so it can calculate based on which bingo chips are on. It can calculate how many number of wins that the user currently has. And then I also have a reference to a 3D piece of text that I added that will show the number of bingo wins once you get, at least one win, and it'll turn on the visibility if the wins is greater than or equal to greater than 0, basically. So yeah, that's how it works. So you can do a lot here with the JavaScript. You can do a lot just in Metaspark. Very powerful tool. I hope this helped. I'm gonna do more videos for this, so please subscribe and like the video if you want to see more in-depth details of different things you can do with Metaspark. But I hope this helps. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I really appreciate you watching the video.